Before I can begin to write my main body paragraph about the problem, I first need to look at my text evidence and decide which text evidence from my research I can best build a paragraph around. I can't start writing a body paragraph unless I know what pieces of text evidence I'm going to use, because otherwise my background won't make sense and my topic sentence might be a little bit unclear. So I have here all 6 of the pieces of evidence I found while I was researching my problem of poverty on Native American reservations and living conditions and what it looks like for the people. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to scan through all of these pieces of evidence and decide upon 2 or 3 that I think would best fit in a paragraph. And so what I start to notice as I'm looking through are some themes. So a handful of these pieces of evidence gives specific statistics on the number of Native Americans who live in poverty. So this one points to the fact that 27% of Native Americans live in poverty. This talks about the fact that poverty is a persistent problem for Native Americans, especially those living on Native American lands. And then this gives a little bit different statistic about the percentage who live in debilitating poverty. So I don't need all 3 of these pieces of text evidence because they're all kind of saying the same thing. I need to choose one that I think would best fit into a paragraph. And I'm going to rule this one out first because it's not specific enough. It doesn't give a specific statistic. So I'm not going to use that one, which leaves me this one and this one. And while the number here is higher, I like that this one references census data. And so this is going to be the first piece of text evidence that I'm going to choose to bring in to really show what the problem is that's facing Native Americans today. And then as I scan through the other pieces of evidence, which is this piece here, and then these 2 down here, it's really, the theme I'm seeing is that it's not so much the poverty, but it's sort of the results of poverty. So I'm seeing these statistics about alcoholism, statistics about suicides, and then this paragraph that gives a whole bunch of statistics on substance abuse rates, the death rate, the exposure to trauma, things of that nature. And so when I look at that theme, I know that I definitely want to pull this piece of evidence because it gives a really startling number to the number of Native Americans that are dying because of alcoholism. And then in the same way, I like some of the statistics here because they're very strong numbers that show these specific problems that are facing Native Americans today. So if I was to sort of restructure this, I've decided not to use any of these. So for organization purposes, I'm just going to delete them out of my document. I want to give this evidence first because it's more general. It's about the poverty that they face. And then I think these 2 pieces sort of can go back to back after I explain this to show what additional problems the Native Americans are facing because of this high number that live in poverty. So when I transfer that into a paragraph, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to state a really strong topic sentence. The problem of poverty is very evident on Native American reservations. So I want my readers to know very specifically that this paragraph is about a problem, and this problem is poverty. And so then what I tried to do is I tried to assume that my readers didn't know anything about Native Americans. And I just gave some background on why they live the way they are. So I said many Native Americans in the United States live on government-protected reservations. These pieces of land were set aside for the people in the 1800s to preserve peace between Native Americans and settlers, as well as make right the land that had been taken away from them in the expansion of the United States. Inconsistent government and misuse of money has caused many problems, however. So all of this is really necessary background to understand why Native Americans are where they are. But then I can move into that first piece of text evidence, which talks about 27% of all Native Americans living in poverty. Now, the commentary is kind of short here because the statistic sort of speaks for itself in that it is evidence of the problem. So these facts alone point most clearly to the problem. More Native Americans exist in poverty than any other people group. But then I'm going to move right into my next piece of evidence. With a transition, other problems persist though. For instance, the alcoholism mortality rate of Indians is 6.5 times that of other Americans. And then I go into my next piece of evidence, which lists some more statistics about the high school dropout rate, the substance abuse rates, the death rates, and the trauma rates. And again, my commentary after that is fairly short because the statistics kind of speak for themselves. Again, these numbers are alarming. Life is not as it should be for so many Native Americans, as seen by the high percentages of substance abuse, trauma, and mortality. So I kind of summarized the main pieces of this text evidence up here. And I end with a very clear conclusion sentence. It is evident that a problem still exists, which should look very similar to my first sentence. The problem of poverty is very evident on Native American reservations. I stayed true to what I stated in the first sentence.